and welcome back to English as a Second Language. I'm David, and I'm so happy you decided to spend some time with me today. Whether you're listening while you're having your morning coffee, taking a walk, or just relaxing at home, I really appreciate you being here. If this is your first time listening to our channel, welcome. And if you've been with us for a while, thank you for coming back. Today's episode is part of our motivation series where we talk about mindset, personal growth, and the mental side of learning and achieving your goals. These episodes are some of my favorites to create because they're about more than just learning English. They're about becoming the best version of yourself. So what are we diving into today? Well, we're going to explore something that I think affects almost everyone, especially those of us who are learning new skills like English. Our topic is why you don't need to be perfect to be successful. And I have a feeling this conversation is going to be both eye-opening and really encouraging for you. Before we get started, I want to let you know that at the end of today's episode, we'll review some really useful vocabulary that we'll use throughout our discussion. These are words and phrases that will help you talk about success, goals, and personal development like a native speaker, so definitely stick around for that. Now, let me start with a question that might hit close to home. Have you ever avoided doing something because you were afraid you wouldn't do it perfectly? Maybe you've hesitated to speak English with native speakers because you're worried about making mistakes. Or perhaps you've put off applying for a job because you don't feel like you're ready enough yet. Maybe you've even delayed starting a project or pursuing a dream because you wanted to wait until you could do it perfectly. If any of this sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. I want to tell you about something that happened to me just last month. I was asked to give a presentation to a group of English teachers about innovative teaching methods. Now, you'd think that after years of teaching and creating content, I'd be confident about this, right? But here's what happened. I spent weeks preparing, researching, and rewriting my presentation over and over again. I was so focused on making it perfect that I almost missed the deadline to submit my materials. The night before the presentation, I was still up at 2 a.m., tweaking slides and rehearsing every word. I was exhausted, stressed, and honestly not at my best. But you know what? The presentation went really well. The teachers loved it. They asked great questions, and several people came up to me afterward to say how helpful it was. And the funny thing is, some of the best moments came from the parts where I went off scrim, where I shared spontaneous stories and responded naturally to their question. That experience reminded me of something really important. The pursuit of perfection often gets in the way of actually achieving our goals. And that's exactly what I want to talk about with you today. Let's start by talking about what perfectionism really is. Now, perfectionism isn't just about wanting to do well. That's actually a good thing. Perfectionism is when we set standards for ourselves that are unreasonably high, and then we feel like failures when we don't meet those impossible standards. It's when we believe that anything less than perfect is not good enough. For English learners, perfectionism can be particularly challenging. You might feel like you can't speak until your grammar is perfect, or you can't write until your vocabulary is as extensive as a native speaker's. But here's the thing, this kind of thinking actually slows down your progress and keeps you from opportunities that could help you improve. I want to share a story about one of my students, Maria. Maria had been studying English for about 3 years, and her English was actually quite good. She could understand movies without subtitles, she could read novels, and she could express complex ideas. But she refused to participate in conversation groups or speak up in meetings at work because she was afraid of making mistakes. One day I asked her, Maria, what's the worst thing that could happen if you make a grammar mistake while speaking? She thought about it and said, well, people might think I'm not intelligent, or they might not understand what I'm trying to say. So I asked her, has that ever actually happened to you? She realized that in the few times she had spoken up, people had been patient and understanding, and they had focused on her message, not her mistake. That conversation was a turning point for Maria. She started participating more in conversations, and you know what happened? Her English improved dramatically. The more she practiced, the more confident she became, and the fewer mistakes she made. But the key was that she had to start before she felt ready. before she felt perfect. This brings me to an important concept that I want to share with you, the idea of good enough. Now, I know that might sound like I'm encouraging you to be lazy or to lower your standards, but that's not what I mean at all. Good enough doesn't mean mediocre or careless. It means recognizing when something meets the requirements and serves its purpose, even if it's not perfect. Let me give you an example from the business world. There's a famous saying in the tech industry, done is better than perfect. Companies like Facebook, Google, and many successful startups follow this philosophy. They release products that work well and serve their users, even if they're not perfect. Then they improve them based on user feedback and real-world use. This approach allows them to get their products to market quickly, start helping users, and learn from real experiences. If they waited until everything was perfect, they'd never release anything, and their competitors would get ahead of them. The same principle applies to your English learning journey. If you wait until your English is perfect before you start using it in real situations, you'll miss out on valuable practice opportunities and real-world learning experiences. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you. Successful people make mistakes all the time. In fact, making mistakes is often a key part of their success. Let me tell you about some famous examples. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, was actually fired from his own company in 1985. At the time, this seemed like a huge failure. But he used that experience to start new companies and learn new skills. When he returned to Apple in 1997, he brought fresh perspectives and innovations that made Apple one of the most successful companies in the world. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job because her boss thought she was too emotionally invested in her stories. That quality that her boss saw as a weakness became her greatest strength and helped her connect with millions of viewers around the world. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, was rejected by 12 publishers before finally finding one who would publish her first book. If she had given up after the first rejection, or even the 11th, we might never have had the Harry Potter series. What these examples show us is that setbacks, mistakes, and imperfections are often stepping stones to success, not barriers to it. The key is to learn from these experiences and keep moving forward. I think this concept is particularly relevant for English learners. Every mistake you make is actually valuable information. When you use the wrong verb tense, you learn something about English grammar. When you mispronounce a word, you learn something about English pronunciation. When you can't find the right word to express your idea, you learn something about vocabulary that you need to work on. But here's the crucial part. You only get this valuable feedback when you actually use your English, mistakes and all. If you wait until you're perfect before you start speaking, writing, or using English in real situations, you miss out on all of this learning. Let me introduce you to another important concept, the idea of failing fast. This is another principle from the business world that applies beautifully to language learning. Failing fast means trying things quickly, learning from what doesn't work, and then adjusting your approach. In language learning, this might mean joining a conversation group even if you're nervous, writing emails in English even if you're not sure about your grammar, or applying for jobs that require English even if you don't feel completely ready. Each of these experiences will teach you something valuable, and the sooner you have these experiences, the sooner you'll learn and improve. I want to share another story with you about a student named Ahmed. Ahmed had been studying English for 5 years, and his grammar was excellent. He could score very high on English tests, and he understood complex grammar rules better than many native speakers, but he was afraid to speak because he wanted his spoken English to be as perfect as his written English. One day, Ahmed's company offered him a promotion that would require him to lead international meetings in English. He was terrified, but he needed the promotion for his career, so he decided to take what he called a leap of faith. In his first meeting, Ahmed made several mistakes. He forgot words, he used the wrong prepositions, and he even mixed up some verb tenses. But you know what? The meeting was successful. His colleagues understood his ideas, they appreciated his expertise, and they were impressed by his willingness to communicate in English. After a few months of leading these meetings, Ahmed's spoken English improved dramatically. He became more confident, more fluent, and more natural. Most importantly, he realized that his colleagues had never expected him to speak perfect English. They just needed him to communicate effectively, and he could do that even with some mistakes. Ahmed's story illustrates something really important. Often, our fear of imperfection is much bigger than the actual consequences of being imperfect. We build up these scary scenarios in our minds, but the reality is usually much more forgiving and encouraging. Now, I want to talk about something that's particularly relevant in our social media age, the comparison trap. We're constantly exposed to other people's highlight reels on social media, and it's easy to compare our behind-the-scenes struggles with other people's polished presentations. When you're learning English, you might look at fluent speakers and think, I'll never be that good, or they make it look so easy. But what you don't see is all the mistakes they made while learning, all the awkward conversations they had, all the times they felt frustrated or embarrassed. I want to let you in on a secret. Even native speakers make mistakes. We use wrong words. We forget what we were going to say. We mispronounce things, and we sometimes use incorrect grammar. The difference is that we don't let these mistakes stop us from communicating. This is such an important mindset shift for English learners. Instead of trying to eliminate all mistakes, focus on communicating effectively. Instead of waiting until you're perfect, start where you are and improve as you go. Let me share with you a concept that I think is really powerful. The idea of progressive improvement. This means getting a little bit better each day, each week, each month, without worrying about being perfect right away. Think about it like this. If you improve your English by just 1% every day, by the end of a year, you'll be dramatically better than you are now. But if you wait until you can improve by 50% all at once, you might never start at all. Progressive improvement is about celebrating small wins and recognizing that every step forward is valuable. Maybe today you used a new word in conversation. Maybe yesterday you understood a movie scene without subtitles. Maybe last week you wrote an email that clearly communicated your ideas. These are all successes, even if they're not perfect. I want to tell you about the Japanese concept of kaizen, which means continuous improvement. Companies like Toyota have used this philosophy to become some of the most successful in the world. Instead of trying to make huge, perfect changes all at once, they focus on making small, consistent improvements every day. You can apply this same principle to your English learning. Instead of trying to master everything at once, focus on making small improvements consistently. Maybe you learn 5 new words this week, or you practice speaking for 10 minutes every day, or you write 1 paragraph in English every morning. These small actions might not seem like much, but they add up to significant progress over time. And here's the beautiful thing. You don't have to be perfect at any of these small steps. You just have to do them consistently. Now, let's talk about something that's crucial for long-term success: resilience. Resilience is your ability to bounce back from setbacks, to learn from failures, and to keep going even when things don't go as planned. Perfectionism actually makes us less resilient because it teaches us to see any mistake or setback as a failure. But when we embrace the idea that imperfection is normal and valuable, we become more resilient. We learn to see mistakes as learning opportunities, setbacks as temporary challenges, and imperfections as part of the journey. I want to share a personal story about resilience. When I first started creating content for English learners, I was so worried about making mistakes that I would spend hours editing every video, every podcast, every article. I would re-record things multiple times, and I would delay publishing because I wanted everything to be perfect. One day, I accidentally published a video that had a technical error in it. I was mortified. But you know what happened? Several viewers left comments saying that the error made me seem more human and relatable. They appreciated that I wasn't trying to be perfect, and they felt more comfortable making mistakes in their own English learning. That experience taught me that authenticity and genuine effort are often more valuable than perfection. Now, I still strive to create high-quality content, but I don't let the fear of imperfection stop me from sharing ideas that might help people. Let's talk about something that's really important for your English learning journey, the growth mindset. This is a concept developed by psychologist Carol Dweck, and it's the belief that your abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. People with a growth mindset see challenges as opportunities to learn. They view effort as the path to mastery, and they understand that failures are just temporary setbacks. This is the opposite of a fixed mindset, which believes that abilities are static and that failures reflect permanent limitations. For English learners, developing a growth mindset is crucial. Instead of thinking, I'm not good at English, you can think, I'm not good at English yet. Instead of thinking, I'll never be fluent, you can think, I'm working toward fluency. These small changes in thinking can make a huge difference in your motivation and progress. The growth mindset also helps you embrace imperfection because you understand that your current level is not your permanent level. Every mistake, every awkward conversation, every moment of confusion is just part of your learning journey, not a reflection of your ultimate potential. Now, I want to give you some practical strategies for overcoming perfectionism and embracing good enough in your English learning journey. First, set process goals rather than outcome goals. Instead of setting a goal like, I want to speak English perfectly, set a goal like, I want to practice speaking English for 15 minutes every day. You have control over the process, but you don't have complete control over the outcome. Second, celebrate your progress, no matter how small. Keep a learning journal where you write down new words you've learned, conversations you've had, or moments when you understood something that you didn't understand before. This helps you see that you're making progress, even if it doesn't feel perfect. Third, reframe your mistakes. Instead of thinking, I made a mistake, think, I learned something new. This simple shift in perspective can help you see mistakes as valuable rather than shameful. Fourth, practice self-compassion. Treat yourself the way you would treat a good friend who is learning English. You wouldn't criticize them for making mistakes, so don't criticize yourself either. Fifth, focus on communication over perfection. Your goal should be to express your ideas clearly and connect with other people, not to speak like a textbook. Most people care more about what you're saying than how perfectly you're saying it. Let me share one more story with you about a student named Chen. Chen was preparing for an important job interview in English. He was so nervous about making mistakes that he memorized his answers word for word and practiced them hundreds of times. But during the interview, one of the questions was slightly different from what he had practiced. He got flustered, forgot his memorized answer, and had to think on his feet. He made several grammar mistakes and used some simple vocabulary. He left the interview feeling like he had failed. But 3 days later, Chen got a call saying he got the job. When he asked the interviewer for feedback, she said, "We were impressed by your authenticity and your ability to think quickly. Your English wasn't perfect, but you communicated your ideas clearly and showed us your problem-solving skills." Chen learned that the interviewer wasn't looking for perfect English. She was looking for someone who could communicate effectively and handle unexpected situations. His willingness to keep going despite his mistakes actually impressed her more than perfect memorized answers would have. This story illustrates something really important. In the real world, people value authenticity, effort, and effective communication over perfection. Most native speakers would rather have a conversation with someone who makes mistakes but engages genuinely than with someone who speaks perfectly but sounds robotic or rehearsed. Before we start wrapping up, I want to ask you a few questions to help you reflect on what we've discussed today. First, can you think of a time when your desire to be perfect actually held you back from doing something or trying something new? What was that situation, and what might have happened if you had been willing to be good enough instead of perfect? Second, what's one area of your English learning where you've been waiting to feel ready or perfect before taking action? Maybe it's joining a conversation group, writing in English, or applying for jobs that require English. What small step could you take this week to move forward, even if you don't feel completely ready? Third, how do you currently respond to mistakes when you're using English? Do you get discouraged and want to give up, or do you see them as learning opportunities? What would change if you adopted a growth mindset toward your mistakes? Fourth, what would you attempt in your English learning journey if you knew you didn't have to be perfect? What opportunities might you pursue if you focused on progress rather than perfection? And finally, how can you practice self-compassion in your English learning? What would you say to encourage a friend who is in your situation? And how can you apply that same kindness to yourself? As we come to the end of our time together today, I want to leave you with some thoughts that I hope will stay with you long after this episode ends. First, remember that every expert was once a beginner. Every fluent English speaker was once where you are now, making mistakes, feeling frustrated, and wondering if they'd ever get better. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't perfection, it's persistence. Second, your journey is unique to you. Don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle or your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. Focus on your own progress and celebrate your own victories, no matter how small they might seem. Third, embrace the messiness of learning. Language learning isn't a straight line from beginner to fluent. It's full of ups and downs, breakthroughs and plateaus, moments of clarity and moments of confusion. All of this is normal and part of the process. Fourth, remember that good enough is often truly good enough. You don't need to speak like a native speaker to communicate effectively. You don't need perfect grammar to express your ideas. You don't need an enormous vocabulary to have meaningful conversations. And finally, be brave enough to start before you feel ready. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. The same is true for using your English in real situations. You'll never feel completely ready, but you can start where you are and improve as you go. I want to thank you so much for joining me for this episode of English as a Second Language. I hope that our conversation today has helped you see that you don't need to be perfect to be successful, whether in English learning or in any other area of your life. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate all mistakes. It's to learn from them, grow from them, and keep moving forward despite them. You have everything you need to succeed right now, even if you don't feel perfect yet. If you found today's episode helpful, I'd love for you to subscribe to our channel and share it with someone who might benefit from this message. Your support helps us continue creating content that can make a real difference in people's lives. Next week, we'll continue our motivation series with another topic that I think you'll find really valuable. Until then, I want you to remember that you're doing great, you're making progress, and you don't need to be perfect to be successful. Take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and keep moving forward. I'll see you next time.